Hello, I'd like to present the work that the British Library's Conservation Department has been doing to develop a risk management strategy for the physical collections of the library during the Covid-19 pandemic. Like many other institutions, we had to leave our site at short notice. We were uncertain when we'd be able to return, and this presented an unprecedented range of new issues and risks, as well as changing the nature of existing risks. Our assessment had to cover both the British Library sites in London and at Boston Spa, and any material that we had off-site for loans, exhibitions, with external contractors or with other external partners. We use our standard risk assessment format, which we have developed to address collection care needs, with risks assessed in terms of impact and likelihood, which then generates an overall risk significance over 4 levels, colour-coded from red, very high, to green, low. We identified a total of 44 separate risks, some of which we were already familiar with, some of which were new, related to the specific details of the current situation. The first set of columns in the risk assessment, you can see to the left of the slide, deals with our initial assessment of the risks. We then considered mitigations, and the risks were then reassessed to give our residual or mitigated risk, which you can see in the colour-coded column on the right-hand side of that table. The tables on the right then summarise our initial and residual risks. And as you can see, in our initial risks, there were 4 which were identified as very high or high significance, and these dealt with 3 main sets of issues. Outstanding urgent work dealing with known issues, limitations of the salvage plan with restricted on-site access, or concerns that emergent problems might go unnoticed in the absence of staff. These issues were then addressed with the following mitigations: the prioritisation of any outstanding critical work, the return of objects to their normal storage, the continuation of collection care operations including monitoring via remote access, home working and limited on-site activity, close liaison with other departments and external partners, precautions to prevent unauthorised or unsupervised access to the collections, the restriction of access to storage areas to stabilise the environments, the disposal of any perishable materials such as food which might have been left in the building, and planning for the eventual reoccupation of the sites. In order then to implement this assessment, it was distributed to the higher level planning teams in the library to inform library-wide strategic responses. It was distributed to our other colleagues in other departments such as estates, engineering and exhibitions as a basis for effective collaboration. It enabled the development of operational risk assessments to support the resumption of normal activities as this became possible, and an example of one of these risk assessments is shown on the right hand side of this slide, in this case for the resumption of use of the reading rooms. And finally, it informed and was embedded into the updated salvage team procedures, which Sarah and Nicole are going to talk about in their presentation later on. Something which we became aware of as we were carrying out this work was that although health and safety considerations were outside our remit, it was impossible to deal with risks in this situation without addressing these issues to at least some extent. And furthermore, we also found that we were increasingly being approached to advise on these particular risks by other areas within the library, as we were becoming recognised as the group who were dealing with risk-based issues. So this then had to be incorporated into the work we carried out, and we had to be aware that people were going to be looking to us for advice on these issues. This assessment has been regularly revised and updated, taking into account new guidelines, advice and research, a better understanding of our own situation and the effectiveness of the mitigations that we're putting in place. In some cases, these proved more effective than we'd initially expected. In other cases, they needed to be altered or updated to address issues which we had not anticipated. And then finally, of course, now this situation has been going on for a year, there are seasonal issues which we hadn't expected to be facing at the start of this process. On the left, you can see the summaries of our initial assessment and our current assessment, giving an indication in the way that this process has changed over this period. Finally, in conjunction with the parallel risk assessment being carried out for the digital material, this work will create the basis for an ongoing risk management strategy for the entire collection as normal operations are resumed. Thank you very much for listening.